we work in an industry where the barrier for entry is so high. And I realized working for a camera company that we need to make cameras more accessible. Never before have I felt this passionate about the idea that our industry is dying. If we don't do something proactive about putting meaning back into the idea that an image is more than taking out your phone and sharing it on Instagram.
Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Wedding Film School Show. My name is Jared and we have another amazing episode for you today. Thank you for joining in. As usual, Mr. Jason joins us. What's up, Jay?
How you doing, buddy?
Good, man.
I'm going to tell you a story today.
Yeah, I know. You've been kind of teasing this for the last few hours.
So, as you know, we live in a paradise called Milford, Massachusetts. That's where our office is.
Yeah.
And so I get to the office the other day, about to go into the studio. I go to the door, and I look to the left, and I just see these two beady eyes just staring at me in the corner. So we have this little inlet into our office, kind of like a glass hallway before you open the doors from the outside. And underneath the windowsill is this giant possum.
It sounds like a Milford possum.
It's just staring at us. Yeah, so that was my introduction to work yesterday.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a Milford kind of critter. I mean, we don't have a lot of homeless people, but we have a lot of homeless possums.
I actually got to call animal control for the first time in my life.
Oh, good.
Very
pleasant. How'd that go?
What a wonderful man.
The one.
The one man.
The one guy.
The one. So it was cool. So yeah, that's wedding filmmaking related somehow.
Sure. I'm just glad. I thought you were going to say it was inside, chewing on cables, and that's why we got a slow start today.
It maybe knew that we had a lot of expensive equipment in the office. It was trying to find its way in. So who knows? There's always a secondhand market for cameras.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Speaking of cameras, we have an awesome guest today, Victor Ha. He's a senior director of marketing and product management for Fujifilm is on. And so we've had our own little journey with Fuji these days.
Yeah. We it's an interesting time to have Victor on because we are in the middle of doing a big switch ourselves from Canon to Fuji. We've been shooting Canon since we started in
10 years of Canon.
And we just got a big order. We just did actually a big training over the weekend for our new Fujifilm cameras.
We just trained 10 shooters on how to use the X-T4.
Yep.
For 6 hours. But yeah, so for us, it's very poignant and maybe we'll talk about some of those things. We're not we love a lot of different cameras, and we're not the type of people who would ever, maybe unless someone paid us, Victor, stick with one system. but in general, no. But what I will, so I say that to say our credibility on why we pick a camera is not because anyone's paying us. We pick things based on how they make sense business wise, and because how they inspire us. And we were working with the Fujifilm. We actually experimented with it for probably a year before we've done photography on Fujifilm for a long time.
Yep.
We've always pretty much done photography on Fujifilm for our brand.
Yeah. Here, let's bring Victor in. Victor, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, I'm a nobody. My name's Victor Ha. No, I've done nothing magnificent in this industry except decide that I wanted to work in the industry and figure it out. So I started as a photographer, went to work at Nix Software, if you're familiar with them. And then from Nix Software, went to a company where we got to manage accessories, lighting, and that kind of stuff. Got a lot of time with photographers, filmmakers, got a chance to really understand needs and wants of creatives. But then also, I didn't do a lot of creative work because I was always on the brand side and, learning the business end of it. So I'm fortunate. I've only ever worked in this industry. And I think that I've been very, very lucky on the timing. I've been very fortunate to get the experience I've had. I've got great mentors in life, one of which was my last boss who I still talk to. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that kind of fit together in order for me to be sitting in front of you, getting the opportunity to have a conversation with you, because in all honesty, I am actually a nobody. I've done nothing magnificent with my life outside of fall into a really great role at Fujifilm.
Yeah, you have one magnificent thing, which is a title that's very long, Senior Director of Marketing and Product Management. So for those of us that can barely pronounce photographer, why don't you let us know what does that do? What is one of those?
That's the longer the title at Fujifilm, the more responsibilities you get.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to be honest with you, that title isn't indicative of the experience. It's a bunch of words that we put together so that when I hand a business card across to somebody, they go, "Oh, Director of Marketing, awesome!
Wow, that guy.
I should probably, yeah, whoa, that's a long title. I should probably listen to you."
Yes.
But so at every company, a director of marketing, director of marketer probably does something different. At Fujifilm, I get to manage the business, right? I get to be involved in product discussions. I get to be involved in product development discussions. I get to be involved in super secret discussions about partnerships and things like that. It's just fun, right? And then that's just on the product side. On the business side, I get to be involved in understanding the camera market and setting the strategy and the tone for the US. And then on top of that, the marketing aspect of it is I get to be involved in the setting of the brand tone of voice and where we are as a brand and how we respond to things and what sorts of conversations we want to get into and where we want to support, communities and organizations, So I think as a role, it's one of the most dynamic and incredible roles that I could have ever gotten a chance to take part in my life. And I hope that it is, for me, with a long-standing one that I can probably call my last role. I see a lot of opportunity and things that I can not only change inside the organization, but within the world of image making that really drive me every day. I love waking up for work every morning, even though it's been in quarantine. I've been in my apartment for a year. So it's a job that I'm very, very passionate about, and the title, I guess it's just
You're not so passionate about the title
I've
or
never
the job.
been, honestly. I've never been. I think titles are false sense they provide a false sense of security.
Yep.
We're obviously big fans ourselves. I feel like we get to see a lot of cameras that come into our office and our studio, and we get a lot of hands-on experience with them. And I think we've developed a certain respect for Fujifilm in that, it always seems like Fujifilm is like the artist's camera, right? Like different people, I think, gravitate towards different companies based on, what they might gravitate towards.
It's like a vibe.
Yeah, like the Sony people are very technical. They want things to be, very exact. And not that Fujifilm isn't technical. They're, in fact, very technical. You know that by the white lab coats that they wear in all their videos.
Their videos are so funny.
They release lenses. But the thing about Fujifilm users that you notice is they tend to be the people that care about not just the images that they're creating, but the way they feel, right, when they're creating images. And that's, I think, a common thread with Fujifilm shooters, whether they're an ex-photographer or just people that love the cameras who are on YouTube raving about them.
I was going to ask about, like, what you were saying, you get to notice, like, the needs of people. Well, this is primarily wedding filmmakers. Do you think that specifically the X-T4, I think, is probably where they went full-on filmmaker. Do you think, did that come out of that noticing where you're like, okay, I notice that people are wanting and needing this?
So Fujifilm's been a company for over 85 years, right? And they've been a company that for over 80 years at this point, they look to the end user, they look to the people using their products, and they learn from that. We're really well known for our firmware updates, right? Because of the fact that we don't make a camera that's 3 generations old obsolete, right? And so when you take that approach, you take that understanding, and you understand that it's wrapped into the DNA of the company. It makes a lot of sense for us to release something like X-T4. And honestly, X-T4 amongst our own fans, it was like, well, why do you have the flip out screen? Can't we just get one with a 3-way tilt screen? Like our fans and our audiences, they're passionate. They love our cameras so much because you said it. When someone uses our camera to make an image, what they're using it for isn't, I think image is secondary to a lot of our fans. I think the feeling that we get when we're making the image is one of the most important things, and then the feeling we get when we see the image is the second thing. Inside of Fujifilm, we have this thing called memory color. It's a term that was coined by one of the color scientists who worked on the film simulations in some of the older films. And he says that there's color correction and color accuracy, right? For Fujifilm, we try to blend in this thing called memory color. And it's the color that will allow you to remember the way you felt when you made the image. And that's kind of the major difference. That's why our color is so important to us, because everyone knows the first time they used Velvia film or Velvia film simulation, right? It's just these things that you kind of pick up, and then you make an image, and you automatically pick a film simulation because you know it's going to give it a certain vibe, right?
Yeah, the thing about Fuji that immediately I was drawn in as a photographer, first and foremost, was film simulations, and just like knowing that Fujifilm was a huge, and still is a huge producer of film in general. That you just appreciated the color science, right? It was like, it's not just a calculator that I'm going to be using to take images. It means something, It's like there is an 85-year history with this camera. That's, the legacy of the camera and the film that we're actually using is important. And like you said, it's a matter of, a feel. I love that. I think that's fantastic.
What was the term again? You said color
memory
film?
color.
Memory color.
Memory color.
Yeah.
So the cool thing. So I love making this connection for people.
Yeah.
There is a man by the name of Sam Anami. He was on the team that developed all of the classic films for Fujifilm, Velvia, Zapiria. I mean, you named it. He was like involved in all of that. He was also in Fujifilm mythology. He was the guy who came to the U.S. like in the 80s to save the frontier printing business because the colors were off, and he spent old amounts of months, coming here and recalibrating the machines. That same guy who leaves his house every day with not one but two color meters to measure the color of light as it falls on things like flowers, who's retired, who still sends notes back to Fujifilm about his observations. That's the guy that developed some of the first digital film simulations that we have, right?
Oh, wow.
That's so dope.
But it makes so much sense when you see it. If you haven't used this, if you're listening to this podcast, most people are very familiar with I've never seen people who talk more about color profiles than freaking Sony people, by the way. It drives me nuts.
It's like, have you picked up a Fuji?
How many logs do you need on your camera?
Yeah.
Give me a break. Like, I have my Blackmagic 3 modes. But if you haven't used Fujis, most of the time, and even as Canon people, right, who have used a lot of Canon, use the color profiles on Canon, it's going to go from really saturated to extremely saturated. And that's pretty much what you're going to do. Fuji has this totally different thing that it feels different. Of first of all, when they do a film simulation, it's not just adding color and saturation. Because film is actually much, much more dynamic range than most of a Rec 709 kind of profile, which is most what people are used to as filmmakers, which is deeply saturated, very crushed blacks. Fuji simulations give you can grade them. You can actually put color grading on them. They're not like these. They don't look like special effects. That's what I would say about them. It was the first time I was like, oh, we should shoot on this Eterna. This looks dope. It's a great building block for our LUTs, which is not something I would normally say about a color profile.
Well, the thing that I kind of want to make sure that we touch on is that when we think about a Photoshop filter, right, it's taking data in an image and it's kind of like crunching the numbers that are already there to create something, spit something out, right? The way that we approach color in our cameras is, well, when the camera's making the image and all the data is available, we have decades of information and, for lack of a better phrase, lookup tables for us to understand what we're going to do with that color in that instance at that point, right? And because we have such a deep history on understanding how colors respond to light and shadow, and how colors respond to texture and how we respond to those colors, there is no comparison to the way we reinterpret and reproduce colors, right? because it is part of every camera that we look at it as an extension of the tool. Like, I came to Fujifilm thinking into myself, oh, I'm a raw shooter. So everyone who's new to EID, it is exactly, this happens all the time. So EID internally stands for Electronic Imaging Division. But anyone new to the team, we put a camera on their desk and they immediately switch it to RAW. And we were like, no, don't do that. And they're like, what are you talking about? Everyone shoots RAW. And you're like, no, don't do that. And so they're like, set it to JPEG, pick your favorite film simulation, and go for a week. Just go for a week. And then tell me what you want to tell me. Then you want to use RAW, and it's just wonderful because honestly, I'm making images again. I'm not sitting there processing them in Photoshop, right? Well, and if I want, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. I can shoot the RAW plus JPEG, but I'm now sharing more images with my friends now, right? Because the JPEGs just look so good.
Yeah, and I think the difference with filmmakers is we never have had RAW.
Right.
And so we're coming from a perspective of like, it needs to look, Jared and I built an entire business off of looking good out of camera. Mm-hmm. That's our business because my post-production is crazy high when you're making wedding films and we shoot a very high volume, like 120 a year. So like I need to look good out of camera, fast, beautiful right away. And I felt like we do use some Blackmagic cameras and they're incredible. They're great cameras, but Fujifilm gets a vibe right away, right out of camera.
Yeah,
And that's just our perspective. And, of course, we welcome on the podcast.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're gonna give up some stuff when you're gonna apply a film simulation in camera, and then have to make some concessions if you're gonna record to a card inside the camera versus like an external recording deck. You're gonna make some concessions, but I guarantee you, in the style and business that you guys have, those concessions, those trade-offs, save you time, money, and they make you sane. To be honest with you, keep you sane.
It makes it more fun. Like when your image, if you've never shot with something that inspires you, like if you've only, I can't imagine someone shooting on log feels inspired when they look at their back of their. It's not inspiring.
Yeah.
You have to like.
I think I've specifically avoided shooting a lot of log cameras because of that. It's like, I love pulling out my camera and seeing exactly, pretty close of what it's going to look like.
Because we're babies like that.
Yeah.
We want it to just look good, and then it feels good, and then you do more of it.
I want to hop into kind of the camera itself too, the way that it's actually used, because I find we've handed a camera to a lot of new filmmakers, and then we've handed the camera off to people that have used plenty of different types of cameras in the past too. And something that people immediately say about it, and I think it might be a misconception among filmmakers is, well, it's not full frame. And they're like immediately taken back by the fact that, oh, we're shooting APS-C. And, one thing that I've loved about Fujifilm is you guys have just kind of gone APS-C all the way up to medium format. And it's like, there's no Fujifilm medium or full frame camera. Can you maybe talk about kind of the thought behind why Fujifilm made that kind of decision? Are you at liberty to, discuss that?
Yeah, I can discuss it as much as I'm able to, right? I think that if you look at X series, X-T4, X-T30, anything that falls into an APS-C type category camera for us, what we prioritize a lot of the time is design, ergonomics, and compactness, right? And so those three pillars are fundamental in how we approach designing and releasing new cameras. The fights that we get into internally about a camera increasing in size by 10 millimeters is a real fight, right? We've gotten to a point where we believe so much in the idea that APS-C must be compact but high quality that we're not willing to make that concession, right? There's a story where cameras have just been taken off the table entirely because they didn't meet the size requirement, right? And when you think about that, there's a really practical application for it. I carry an XE4 now around with me everywhere.
I got one of those today, actually.
Honestly, I was I was so concerned because of like, oh, it's got less buttons or whatever it is. It's like now just idiot proof. I can just take it out, pop a different lens on it, just play with it. I'm like, oh, okay, I totally get it now. It's just it's a different camera, right? And the thing that when we make cameras, X-T4, X-E4, X-T30, X-T3, they all got the same sensor. They all have the same processor. So you're not giving up any image quality. So at that point, what we're doing is we're designing for experience, and we're designing for application. One of the best things a professional photographer ever told me was, so the reason I love X series cameras for the work that I do in weddings is I know regardless of the camera that I pick up, if I use it, I'm going to get the experience that I want from it. So if I'm with a bride that's anxious and she doesn't like the big rapid fire of a camera going off, I'll just bring up the X100V and I'll stand in the corner. It's a single lens, it's single focus, it's small, it's like a point and shoot, and I'll still get the same quality, right? So he just kind of unpacked how he approaches our cameras, and I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, right?
That to me it's Fujifilm is kind of a ecosystem that's one system in a way that like obviously medium format is a little bit of a different animal, but anything in the X series, they're perfectly compatible. And you don't need to think like, oh, this color like is this? I have a Super 16 and a Super 35 sensor rolling right now in our room, and I know the colors aren't going to match. I'm going to have to switch them, and I haven't found that to be the case with the Fuji, so I think it's right on. It's like
it's wonderful too, because I talked to so many photographers who are like, thank you for keeping the X-T3 around. I'm like, why are you thinking this? I mean, I want to know why. They go, because I have an X-T4, great image quality. I just picked up my backup for a fraction of the cost, same image quality. There isn't a camera manufacturer in the world that lets me do. If I want to pick up a backup of the same quality, I've got to spend the same amount of money. And I was like, oh, that's a really great observation. Thanks for giving me that. You know. So thinking about X series, right? It's a wonderful thing when you just kind of sit and noodle it for a little bit. The individuals that were involved in positioning and creating this brand of camera, I think they had long vision, and it's really paid off for someone like me who comes in and gets to see it all, right? But when you look at GFX is,
for those that don't know, if you're a photographer, or if you're not a photographer, GFX is medium formats.
Yeah. So our GFX camera, we call it large format, and I'll explain that in a second. So it is. I'm very excited about it. And so just to dive into it, in the world of film, there's there's 35 millimeter, there's medium format, which is slightly bigger than 35 millimeter, and there's like two sizes of medium format, right? And then outside of medium format, there's like large format. There's all these different film sizes, but because film in photography was like just so ubiquitous, people referred to medium format as that film size, and they knew that it was bigger than 35 mil because they kept calling it 35 mil, right? So fast forward to 2021. Now we've got different generations using cameras. Some of them have used film, some of them have used digital. 35 millimeter equivalent is now referred to more as full frame. And so now there's a lot of people going, well, full frame, medium format full frame's got to be bigger than medium format, right? Because full sounds full and medium sounds. And
that is true.
So
that's funny.
And so the understanding is like, okay, well, we live in a digital world. Standards and things are kind of just they're going by the wayside, right? So let's approach our system as something new. Let's approach it and create a vocabulary around it, just the same way we created a vocabulary around X series. And you know what? Let's just own it and let's call it large format. And large format, people call large format in cine. So I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? And so the at the end of the day, the reason I'm so excited about that camera and what we've done with the system is X series is your breadth of camera, right? You've got different cameras, you've got different lenses, you can really pick and choose. And it prioritizes compactness and speed and versatility. GFX is an entirely different animal, especially in the context of like filmmaking, right? Next to Alexa 65, Red Monstro, and maybe one other camera, we are the next largest imaging surface that makes an image at the full width of our sensor. So our medium format sensor is roughly like 2 times, like 1.7 times bigger than a full frame sensor. The horizontal dimension, when it makes video and records video at the full width, at the full length of the horizontal dimension. So what you're getting there is you're getting the compression, you're getting the image quality, you're getting that cinema look that everyone was like, whoa, that looks really, really cool. But you're getting it on a digital camera that is made by Fujifilm and is one of the only ones in the world that can do it like that. So I'm pretty pumped.
Does your wedding filmmaking business offer live streaming? Maybe you're just looking to get into live streaming. Wherever you find yourself today, one of the most overlooked elements of a successful live stream is securing a rock-solid connection to your final destination. In that case, you should check out the LiveU Solo. The LiveU Solo offers bonded cellular streaming, which combines up to 4 separate internet connections into a single, fully redundant connection. Live stream with confidence to any platform from basically any location. This thing is battery powered, they're plug and play, and they're supported by LiveU's innovative LRT service. The LiveU Solo is perfect for any event videographer that needs an easy, on-the-go, reliable stream. Get one today. Victor, can I ask a question about the GFX?
Sure.
You probably can't answer this. Have there been any thought into creating a cine-style camera using that sensor?
You know, I think that there's always a desire for us to create revolutionary products. And I think that there's always a desire for us to look at the market and then try to find a way to fill the need. But at some point, right, there's a 3 pillars of engineering, like speed, cost, affordability, right? And when we look at the need in the industry for large imaging services with fast readout that have fast enough refresh to mitigate rolling shutter. The technology, that's the thing we got to look at first, and I'm just not sure that it's available at the current moment.
You're just going to melt that sensor into oblivion.
Well, yeah, if what we want to do, right? I would love to say yes, we're looking at it, but I think that in the future we always look to the needs of the market, and we always look to try to figure out what the next camera should be, So it's a hope in my personal, but I'm not sure where we're going to be with that.
The X-T4 for us, I mentioned it before, was kind of that turning point for us where I was like, now I do photography. I have a GFX. I have an X-T4 that I was shooting for photography, and then having the X-T4, I was like, you know what? We're at that point now. We've had our cameras forever. We've been shooting Canon. I think the X-T4 is at that point now where we can totally upgrade our cameras to something like the X-T4 as wedding filmmakers. And there's a host of reasons of why we've done that. IBIS, 4K 60, probably the main 2 reasons for us.
10-bit color too is wonderful.
Oh yeah. The Fuji color is goes without saying. What was that change for Fujifilm, and why did you guys decide to kind of make a camera that was kind of geared towards filmmakers?
Well, and I would even to add on to that before you answer, it seems to me that you were looking right at filmmakers when you tweaked that camera, because so many of the improvements were pretty much only for filmmakers and over the X-T3, because the X-T3 didn't really need that much improvement for photographers, but it's like they took the X-T3, they've changed a few things, but they made it. Like, what's funny actually is when I talk to photographers, even my Fuji guys, they're like, I don't really, like, yeah, they're both good. Exactly kind of what you described before. And I'm like, I would never use an X-T3 for what I do, but the X-T4 is like, that's incredible for me. Was that what the thinking was when they were kind of like, let's get into this market?
So if we look back at our cameras, XH1, X-T3, we were already moving that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
XH1 was the first camera we made that had an IBIS.
Yep.
And again, we listened to our audience. So when that camera came out, there was a lot of feedback. And then X-T3 came out right after that, and there was a lot of feedback about what that didn't have. So I think when you think about X-T4 as a successor to X-T3, after having released XH1, X-T3, and now X-T4, we would have been, I guess, really, really not paying attention to have released X-T4 without those improvements, right? I think the desire to be able to be a viable solution for image makers that do motion and filmmaking, all that kind of stuff, was always part of the strategy for as far back as XH1, right? Maybe even before that. But I think with X-T4, what again that represents, that camera really does represent how the brand listens, how the engineers listen, right? And how we really, really try if we get an opportunity to bring in feedback that is going to make the camera more widely adopted as a tool.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. As a Fuji fanboy for 6-7 years or so, one thing that I've been just floored by and was so excited about, and I'm waiting a couple more months, saving up for it. That I've seen Fujifilm, listen to the audience, was the addition of the 80, GF80 1.7 that just was released. That was a lens that had huge demand, especially when it came to, wedding photographers wanting just super shallow depth of field, amazing, creamy bokeh, and just like, that camera essentially probably equates to like an F1 on a full frame sensor. I don't know exactly. I'm not super technical.
It's like it's like a 50 mil full frame equivalent, right?
So it's roughly like my numbers are kind of fuzzy. It's like in like a low 60s in terms of 35 millimeters.
Similar experience,
and it's going to be somewhat below like a 1 point, well, right around 1.4-ish.
Yeah. I'm a part of a couple Facebook groups when it comes to wedding photography, and that they were just like, man, if they would just do this, it would just be over. Like, and sure enough, a year goes by, and here we are, looking at the lens that everyone's been begging for. So I can definitely attest to, and appreciate Fujifilm for kind of listening to the audience, what they're doing, and also just I appreciate. Fujifilm listening to the photographers who are also just nowadays, if you're a creator, if you're a photographer, you're also a videographer by just owning a camera. The market calls for people to shoot video nowadays. And I feel like Fujifilm has just been like, you know what, we have to give people a camera that does both really well and shoots 4K 60 as well. So definitely something that I've appreciated about Fujifilm, GFX line and the X line in general.
The relationship between, I know a lot of people who have a lot of different connections to a lot of different brands. And I hear all different things, some good, some bad. Some relationships with camera manufacturers are more like, you're bequeathed the camera by them, and then they expect you to market it, and then you don't hear from them for 3 years. The one thing, because if you're listening to this, I don't really care what camera you use. You use whatever you want. I'm just giving you information and hopefully a little insider information that will help you understand why we make the decisions we make and why other people make the decisions they make. And the one thing I always hear from Fuji artists, besides the fact that they are always goofing on Victor, the one thing I hear is that the connection with the brand is real. And I was with a photographer. She's this great Russian photographer, and I'm going to forget her name, who we were with, but she was talking about how she was with this other camera company, and she switched over. She started getting endorsed by Fuji, and the relationship was like, it caught her off guard that they were like, well, what did you like about it? Well, what didn't you like about it? What, at a dinner, the head of Fujifilm sitting with her and says, tell me about how I can make a camera for you. And it made me think, the first time I ever met you in Las Vegas, you were like, how can I help you? That was all you said. You're like, I don't care about this and this and this. All I want to know is, how can I help you? What can I do to make a camera for you? And I think, if you don't know that about the company, I always say this with Fuji people, if you don't have it in the camera, it's because you didn't ask. Or it's not possible with science, because Fuji is a company that listens, and I just think that relationship with the camera company is kind of unique, Victor.
Well, thanks for saying that. I think everyone at Fujifilm, when they hear that, they get really proud, because it's not just a single person. It's our division that gets to do this job that gets to be the ones on the in the world playing with these great toys. We're really passionate about that, right? We're really passionate about the opportunity to get to be part of the conversation. And so I know from my team that I get to work with, we take that approach everywhere. You know, we take that approach and we believe that we don't know what conversation or how the next conversation is going to impact the brand, impact us, impact the other person, but we sure as heck approach that conversation in a way that's kind and creates enough space for there to be enough curiosity on both fronts, right? And I think that when you can approach a conversation with an individual, irrespective of who they are, and create and foster a sense of curiosity, then it becomes limitless to what you're going to be able to accomplish with them. And when I say accomplish, I'm not talking about like, you know, winning the Super Bowl or anything, right? Yeah, I mean, that'd be great. But what I mean accomplish is like, how many times you've had a conversation with somebody at a trade show or whatever it is, and you just want that 5 minutes back of your life, right? And I think that
you can tell they want their 5 minutes back. You can tell like the person's like, how dare you talk to me, person who's going to buy my products? I work for this company. And you're like, you work for me, actually.
Right. And you know, I think that for me, I always want the brand to represent the way that I see the brand. And the way that I see our brand is that it's approachable, that it took me in as the director of marketing. Yeah, sure, I had experience in the industry, right? But they could have, they easily probably could have found someone with more experience, and they easily could have found somebody with you know, more bona fides. But they picked me, and I think they approached that situation of interviewing me and bringing me on board and onboarding me. They approach that situation in the same way they approach our cameras, is what's the potential, right? What's the possibility? And that's some pretty big stuff. You don't see that a lot in a company.
No.
Do you ever browse the site FujiRumors.com, Victor? Yeah. As someone on the,
I think everyone in the organization does.
You get them all.
I always wonder, as someone from the inside, how much you just must enjoy going through Fuji Rumors and being like, who said that? Or whatever.
I think that his name's Patrick,
yes.
right? Patrick, who runs Fuji Rumors. I think that he is as passionate as we are about the brand,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that. I love that he's so passionate, because he's that passionate. It lets me know there are people who are just excited about our products as we are internally, and whether or not they're true or false or even in the middle, it doesn't matter. Like, I look at it as like, wow, guys, we have a rumor site.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
If we had Wedding Film School rumors, I would love that.
yes.
Somebody listening, start that up.
I mean, it's probably great for you guys though too at the same time, because you know that's the source, right? That's where your most passionate fans are going to be, and where you can take a lot of inspiration of what people are arguing about. Because honestly, I love it. I love being a part of that community, because I haven't seen people argue about lens choice and why would they choose if they're going to go with a 33 millimeter. X series lens or a 35 millimeter X series lens.
You heard that debate?
Why don't they just go with a 34 millimeter? And
I was in a room with Paul the other day, and he goes, "Can we just talk about something?" He's like, "Why?" It's the 33 mil.
Yeah.
He's like, "Why are they doing this 33 mil? The 35 is that the current one?"
Yeah.
He's like, "The 35 is perfect," and I'm like, "We don't like the 35." I'm like, "I want the 33. We actually had the exact opposite discussion in our office. We were like, "Oh, I can't wait for this new 33. And I think it's like the way people think about
the rumored 33. By the way.
rumored 33.
Yes.
Wait, guys, we're making a 33?
Yeah. Exactly.
33 1.2.
Exactly. Yeah,
All right.
1.4 is the rumor.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, like, I think us as photographers, everyone who's a photographer secretly also wishes they worked at a camera company. right? Because they could have all the gear, they could look at everything and know everything, you know. And I'm sure at one point you were a photographer, right? And you're imagining, like, I could never imagine working at a camera company, right? How is like the experience of actually being behind the curtain changed how you view cameras and like that, the tool that we use to make films and make images? How has it changed your appreciation? Do you feel the same? Closer, like, how is it different now?
We work in an industry where the barrier for entry is so high for anyone who doesn't have the resources to do it, right? You think about when you bought your first camera. I bought my first camera, a digital camera, when I was 21 years old, and I had to eat ramen for like 2 months, right? And it was a first generation 6 megapixel digital camera that I've spent like $2,300 for on like some shady eBay site, right? That was when eBay was like kind of shady still. And I realized working for a camera company that we need to make cameras more accessible. We need to find a way to get cameras in people's hands. We need to find a way to work with nonprofits that do good community work in communities that don't have after school art programs and put cameras in people's hands, right? And I think that never before have I felt this passionate about the idea that our industry is dying and that the industry is shrinking and that the industry is not going to last the next generation if we don't do something proactive about putting meaning back into the idea that an image is more than taking out your phone and sharing it on Instagram. You know, so right before we went into lockdown, I had this habit. I'd be out at a photography event. Heck, I'd just be out in New York or whatever it is, and I would purposely wear my camera on a strap, you know, on my person, um, and would just have random conversations with people that walked up and, you know, wanted to talk to the camera or whatever it was. And you know, you talk to enough people, you kind of learn if they know photography, they don't know photography, if they have an interest in that kind of stuff. And so I just started giving cameras away, just take the card out, take my strap off, and just started giving cameras away. And it changed my perspective on what it means and what it could mean to somebody when they get a camera. You give a camera to the right person, they can change the world, right? So that's what's different for me now, is that I look at Fujifilm as an organization that empowers someone like me who is passionate about image making. This is the only industry that I know. I know nothing else. If I were to walk out and throw an application into the world for another job, I wouldn't know the first thing about where to go, what to do, or how to do it, right? Because I only know photography. And I only know this industry. And so when you've got that perspective and that's all you know, you really fight tooth and nail to make sure that it's there for the next generation. And it's there for the next generation of leaders who look like me, who don't look like me, who are women, right? You have to think about that stuff. So it's important for me.
That's really cool to hear. And I think about that a lot. As a image maker myself, I have a daughter, and I'm not great at taking real pictures in my real life. I'm not really great at giving her that's me. That's who I am. But I leave it at work, you know? And I think one of the things I feel really passionate about in our home is like, just like with my guitar. I have a guitar in my house, even if I don't play it, just so my daughter sees it. Because I want her to be a person who thinks about music as a valuable part of your home. And I'm like, why am I not thinking about my camera that way? You know, I want her to not just think of her phone. I want her to be intentional with everything. And I think like cameras force you to slow down. They force you to think about things. An image isn't a disposable, throwaway part of your life. An image is like, it's a memory. It's funny because we got this time in history where we can all just capture memories, and now that's not valuable. It's like this mad thing that people would have never imagined would be possible. And now it's like totally taken for granted. And I do think that's a shame. I think, you know, I guess I can say any camera is better than no camera, but I do think slowing down and I love that. My wife, her job is content creation. That's what she does. She's a social media person. And I'm like, get a real camera. Don't just use your phone. Let's get a real camera. And my 2 cents on cameras, when camera companies can understand that the best thing for them is to get an image off the camera and onto someone's phone with minimal editing and like on the fly, people will stop using their phones. But because really what's going away is laptops.
Yeah.
Like if people could take a picture and just have it sync up to their phone and then they can post that instead of their phone picture, I think people will start using cameras again. But I think it's more like you brought it up way earlier in the interview. The thing that actually hurt the camera industry, I think, is RAW codecs. Because
I'd probably agree with that, yeah.
Because everyone, when someone uploads an image, the amount of space, time, I, in my own head, I have this negative association with dealing with my stupid images. Like, and then the second I get a phone, I'm like, oh, I can just take this and share it right away without even thinking. It's like that. I think, I see camera companies catching on to that. I do see that, and I do think people are going to. I think there will be a little bit of a rebound of people enjoying image making again, and so I'm glad you guys are part of that because I think, you know, you're one of the good guys. You guys are doing something meaningful, and you can see the heart behind it, and so.
Well, and I think a lot of people feel the same way as you, where you know, we have 7 X-T4s sitting in the other room. They sit in our equipment closet, but you were like, hey, I'm gonna buy X-T4 and you know, make this something that I bring to the house and actually take photos. And I think that's a lot of people's break in with Fuji, where they're like, hey, I have all this gear, but I just want something that I can throw in my bag that's still a fantastic sensor. And I honestly, I think that's how a lot of Fujifilm photographers, like even, you know, official X photographers.
I've heard that story actually where they go
so many times.
They go, oh, I just wanted a camera to bring on vacation. That was so cheap that if I broke it, I wouldn't really care that much. And then I started taking pictures with it. And I actually decided I liked it better than my big full frame camera. And I said, screw that camera. And I just got rid of it. And I don't even need that. And I think just you guys had the guts to, I think, do something that's different. And I will always say this, it doesn't matter who you are or what you make. If you're willing to try something different, that should be celebrated. And I think Fuji does something different. So one of the things I want you to do different again in the future is just give me 4K 60 on your large format. Is that what we're calling it? Large format images. Just give me that, and then I can use it to make wedding films.
Dude, I totally, I'm on board.
That's awesome.
Sign me up, man.
But
you know what? Actually, why don't you make the pitch? Let's do the Fuji rumors.
Just tell them all. Look, all 20,000 people who would buy this camera. That's the problem. We're a small market. Let's be real.
Victor, I really appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing your thoughts on cameras. And something I wanted to just, you know, reiterate of what you had just said is like taking imagery, taking photos, doing video, especially what we get to do in the wedding world. It's important, right? You know, and I appreciate that Fujifilm treats it with, I think, the respect that it deserves. I think a lot of people out there kind of look at like, oh, weddings, like, you know, I'm just doing this because I want to, you know, use it as a building block to get to real production,
real work,
quote unquote. But understand that what you're doing as a wedding photographer, as a wedding filmmaker, it is important. And we say it all the time. Like, you're probably one of the only artists that somebody will hire in their lifetime. They're not going to hire someone to paint a photo on their wall. They're going to hire you to make a film for them, or they're going to hire you to take photos for them. And that's important. So I just wanted to thank you, Victor, for, you know, the work that you guys are doing, you know, plugging away, giving artists what they want and what they need, and just listening at the end of the day and taking it serious. So, you know,
thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine. I've only been at Fujifilm for 2 years, right? So I think the next 2, 4, 6, 8, 20 years is going to be exciting for all of us. I think about, in closing, my last boss goes by the name of Jan Letterman. Still talk to him to this day. One of my mentors, heroes. He taught me pretty much mostly all the things I know. He was in his like mid-30s when a small company by the name of Mamiya started making waves in America.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was part of the team that brought in Profoto at the time, and another small company called Pocket Wizard, and another small company.
Everything we all use.
He was, I want to say he was somewhere between 33 and 36, and he had this crazy idea. And he said, I want to import cameras from Japan, and I want to bring them into the US, and I want to import lighting, from Sweden and bring into the US. I want to bring Sekonic light meters into the US. I want to bring X-Rite color management into light meters. And he's done this now for his entire career. But when he was 30, he had this idea that he was going to do this thing. And he brought in X-Rite, he brought in Profoto, he brought in Mamiya, he brought in Sekonic. And these are household names if you ever were in photography at that time, or even are learning photography now, right? And I'll close on this story. It's still mythology, right? It could be real, it could be not, but I love the story. So you guys know what a Sekonic 758 is? It's a light meter.
Yeah.
It's a light meter that's got a basically a scope, right? An eyepiece. So legend has it that Jan was sitting in Japan at a whiskey bar. They'd just had a long day of meetings, whatever it was. He had this idea because, they were selling a regular incident meter, and then they were selling a spot meter, and you had to sell two things to get to actually, do work. And he, halfway through dinner, goes around on the other side and goes, hey, I will order X amount right now. Here's the PO for it. Writes it on a napkin. If you make this. And so legend has it that conversation is the reason we have the Sekonic 558. I don't know. I love the story though.
That's awesome.
The world is what it is because people are willing to say or not say things. They're willing to do the thing that they believe in, say the thing that they want. And I think as a Canon person, I have felt oftentimes over the years that it doesn't matter what I want. It just matters what they're wanting to make, and they're always stratifying the market. And I think maybe you're kind of conditioned that way if you're listening as a camera person to go like, well, it doesn't matter what I want. It just, they're not going to listen to me. They don't care. And I want to tell everybody, like, it's really, even with Canon, it's really not true. Like these companies do listen. It does matter the feedback you give them. And so like, this is, Victor's with Fuji, but like whoever you are with, try to connect with them and let them know what you want, because the relationship you have with a camera company should be a partnership. Like if you don't buy their stuff, they don't get to make anything. And like, if you don't make anything with their stuff, no one gets to see. It's advertising. So it's mutually beneficial for everybody if we have good relationships with our tools. And so that's what I've seen. The more I push and have conversations with people in the industry, the more I find out that they're not just some terrible faceless people who don't care about us at all. Like it's not that way.
I got so caught up in telling that story, I forgot the whole purpose of telling you the story.
Yeah.
So I'm going to finish this. I'm going to say goodbye to you guys and catch you another time. But he did that. Jan did all that in his 30s.
Yeah.
I'm about to turn 40, and he did that. And just seeing the influence that he had in the industry and the things that he was able to do and the conversations that he was able to have and how he was able to help shape my perception of photography even before I knew him. That's why I'm excited about Fujifilm, right? Is because it puts me in the room at least to have the ability to get the possibility of maybe changing the course of the ship just enough so that the next generation of people that come in after me can move that ship just a little bit more, right? And that's the exciting thing is we're seeing a whole generational shift in terms of presenters, influencers, leadership, thought leaders, all that stuff when it comes to photography, and how we approach the craft. And now is the time that we start to move that ship, and I'm really excited about that. So thanks for the opportunity.
We love it.
And thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. Appreciate you guys. And guys, if you're listening to the show, thank you once again. Make sure you are giving us a sub if you've learned anything. And if you are Fuji fans, of course, give this a thumbs up. Give Fuji some love. Make sure that you are checking out our weekly film reviews and submitting. If you want to have your film reviewed by the crew here at Wedding Film School, we'd love to do that. And check out the Facebook group as well. That's the last place that you can be a part of the community as well. Give us your feedback in the comments below, and we will see you next week on the Wedding Film School show.